Why do we have an epidemic of mental health issues among teenagers in the United States? This is one of the questions that Jonathan Haidt tries to answer in his book, The Anxious Generation. He tackles this rise of mental health issues. And maybe you have teenagers. Maybe you have teenagers with mental health issues. It's a fascinating book. You've probably heard about it. I know, I think 3 days after it came out, I did a LinkedIn post about it and got a lot of traction on that LinkedIn post. So I want you to look at the subtitle of Haidt's work here, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. Now, if you're not familiar with Jonathan Haidt, he's quite the scholar. I know he has had definitely some pushback on this book. As far as I can tell, he's not a Christian. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. I don't think that Haidt is. His PhD is from the University of Pennsylvania. He's authored many books, as you can see on the screen there, written more than 100 academic articles, considered by one magazine one of the top 50 thinkers in the nation. He's given 4 TED Talks. So he really is a social psychologist. But he's addressing this issue and saying, why are we having all these problems as childhood has been rewired? There have been skyrocketing rates of teen depression, teen suicide. If you follow the stats on that, it's ridiculous. And he says that this rewiring is primarily due to 2 different things. One is the decline of free play. I have 5 kids and ages 7 to 14. And one thing my wife and I try to do is get them off of screens and get them outside playing, sometimes structured games. All 5 of them are in soccer teams right now, but also just unstructured, just free play. That's so good for kids to have that kind of free play. But the second thing he talks about is the rise of smartphones, kids getting smartphones at a younger and younger age, and then social media, all the pressures, what that does to someone's brain. I'm actually reading another book about that right now called Digital Liturgies, about how social media affects our brain. So Haidt examines this in quite a bit of detail. And he says that, particularly social media creates really unrealistic expectations of young people, particularly young girls. So these are significant problems. Let me tell you a few of my takeaways from the book, just big picture, and then also give you some of my favorite quotes, which I think will help summarize the book in just several different of my favorite quotes. Number 1, prioritize unstructured play. If you have kids at home, make sure that they have time for unstructured play, regular time for them to play with friends, play outdoors. Sometimes I know as adults, we want to be involved in all that, which is fine, but they need to have times they're just doing things on their own. Maybe they come back in and they say, Dad, I'm bored, but it's really helping them develop that creativity, social interaction, problem solving. Don't you step in as the parent and try to solve all their problems. Let them get good at doing that themselves. Secondly, limit their screen time. I really think that your younger kids shouldn't have smartphones. Maybe when they become a teenager. My 2 oldest are teenagers, and we just got them smartphones, and we're setting a lot of boundaries on those. They can't have those in their room. They have to charge them in a public place. But even when they're old enough to have smartphones, don't let them use them all the time. It shouldn't just become like another appendage for them. Reading, board games, other hobbies. My kids are into chess, which I enjoy playing with them. A couple of them can beat me now, but just other hobbies like that they can do. Encourage face-to-face interactions, whether that's a play date when your kids are younger, team sports. Our kids have played soccer and basketball. One of them would have liked to make the volleyball team, didn't quite make it, but that's okay. And then let your home be a place where they feel really welcome. We put in a basketball court at our house. We want to do things where the kids want to come home, and there's fun things for them to do at home. Embrace boredom. It can be one of the greatest catalysts for creativity. You've probably seen this in your own life, and it's the same thing for your kids. Boredom is not a bad thing. It allows them to have time to develop their own solutions to various problems. I think sometimes our society kind of backs away from being physical, but wrestle with your kids. If they fall down and scrape their knee at the park, that's not a bad thing. These are part of childhood. And I'm 45, and when I was younger, we got all kinds of skinned knees. I grew up with 4 boys in my family, but I think some parents are too nervous about that. Model a healthy lifestyle for your kids. And I feel convicted as I say this, as I'm trying to lose a little bit of weight myself right now, but model that healthy lifestyle, go hiking. We like to try to hike to waterfalls. Children, of course, learn by example. Focus on character, not just achievement. Again, you want your kids to do well in school. Their academics are important, but emphasize that kindness, perseverance, responsibility, integrity, these things are a lot more important just than academic performance. Talk a lot with your kids. Talk to them about screen time. Talk to them about why you have them play outside, and listen. Listen to your kids. I like to most every morning do high low buffalo as I take the kids into school. What's your best thing of the day, your worst thing of the day or of yesterday, and then something unusual. That's what we do for the buffalo, just some weird fact. Connect with other parents, build a support network with other parents. Our kids go to private Christian schools, so that makes it really nice for the support network. Maybe you homeschool. We actually try to homeschool each of our kids in their 6th grade year, but have some kind of support network. And then pray. And Haidt doesn't really talk about this in his book. He's not a Christian. But as Christian parents, if you're a Christian parent who's watching this, we realize that we desperately need God's grace. We can do the best possible job with our kids, but at the end of the day, the world is bombarding them with messages about how far short they fall, especially if they're on social media. We want to raise balanced kids who are not screen saturated. We don't want kids with mental health issues, but a big part of that is just praying and asking God for his help. Here are some of my favorite quotes from the book. Some of them help summarize the book. Others are just ones that I thought were fantastic. So Haidt says this: my central claim in this book is that these two trends, overprotection in the real world and underprotection in the virtual world, are the major reasons why children born after 1995 became the anxious generation. He says we overprotect them when they're outside on the playground, and then we put them in front of a screen and we leave. So we're too permissive in the one area and not permissive enough in the other. I thought this was a great story. It made me think about this. Imagine you fell into a deep sleep on June 28th, 2007, the day before the iPhone was released. Like Rip Van Winkle, the protagonist in an 1819 story by Washington Irving, you wake up 10 years later and you look around. The physical world looks the same to you, but people are behaving strangely. Nearly all of them are clutching a small glass and metal rectangle. Anytime they stop moving, they assume a hunched position. They stare at it. They do this the moment they sit down on a train or enter an elevator or stand in line. There's an eerie quiet in public places. Even babies are silent, mesmerized by these rectangles. When you do hear people talking, they usually seem to be talking to themselves while wearing white earplugs. A lot changed in 10 years with smartphones. Another quote: the phone-based life makes it difficult for people to be fully present with others when they are with others and to sit silently with themselves when they are alone. This is the great irony of social media. The more you immerse yourself in it, the more lonely and depressed you become. It's social media, but it's making us less social. Experience, not information, is the key to emotional development. Another great quote. People don't get depressed when they face threats collectively. They get depressed when they feel isolated, lonely, or useless. I definitely think that's true much of the time. There probably are times when people get depressed, even facing a problem collectively. But I think he's right that often it's the isolation that really ends up leading to depression in many cases. Even when members of Gen Z are not on their devices and appear to be doing something in the real world, such as sitting in class, eating a meal, or talking with you, a substantial portion of their attention is monitoring or worrying about events in the social metaverse. As the MIT professor Sherry Turkle wrote in 2015 about life with smartphones, we are forever elsewhere. And that's not just an issue with our kids. I feel that myself oftentimes. This is a profound transformation of human consciousness and relationships. Another quote from Thoreau's Walden, where Henry David Thoreau says, the cost of a thing is the amount of life which is required to be exchanged for it, immediately or in the long run. The cost of something is the amount of your life that it takes. That's an interesting quote as it relates to social media. Our goal in designing the places children play should be to keep them as safe as necessary, not as safe as possible. That's interesting too. I think most of us would think keep them as safe as humanly possible, but you say, no, it's okay if they fall occasionally. It's okay if they skin a knee. Make it as safe as necessary. I thought that was interesting. Synchronous, face-to-face physical interactions and rituals are a deep, ancient, and underappreciated part of human evolution. Now, I'm a biblical creationist, don't necessarily believe in, I don't know that I would use the word human evolution, but that idea of face-to-face physical interactions being important, I absolutely agree with that. Human nature and moral psychology. He says this: in my 35 years of studying moral psychology, I've come to see this as one of humanity's greatest problems. We are too quick to anger and too slow to forgive. We are also hypocrites who judge others harshly while automatically justifying our own bad behavior. And I know for me, it's easy to do that with my kids, to cut out all their screen time, but then I'm on screens a lot. So don't be hypocritical as you institute things at your house. The unique challenge of Gen Z: they became the first generation in history to go through puberty with a portal in their pockets that called them away from the people nearby and into an alternative universe that was exciting, addictive, unstable, and, as he says, unsuitable for children and adolescents. The two big mistakes, again, going back to an earlier quote, overprotection in the real world, where children need to have direct experience in order to learn, and underprotection online, where children are particularly vulnerable, especially as they're going through puberty. So we overprotect in the real world, where we need to give them more freedom, and we underprotect in the online world. And that, in many ways, summarizes much of his book. People can't really multitask. I didn't realize I had this other quote here. All we can do is shift attention back and forth between tasks while wasting a lot of it on each shift. We don't let preteens buy tobacco or alcohol or enter casinos. The cost of using social media in particular are high for adolescents compared with adults, while the benefits are minimal. Let children grow up on Earth first before sending them to Mars. He talks about the impact specifically on girls. Girls in virtual networks are subjected to hundreds of times more social comparison than girls experience for all of human evolution. They're exposed to more cruelty, bullying, because social media platforms incentivize and facilitate relational aggression. Their openness and willingness to share emotions with other girls espouses them to depression and other disorders. The twisted incentive structures of social media reward the most extreme presentations of symptoms. And I think some social media platforms honestly are working on this. So I don't want to make all social media out to be evil. You might be seeing this on a social media platform. Neurons that fire together wire together, meaning activities that repeatedly activate a constellation of neurons cause those neurons to connect more closely. So if a child goes through puberty doing archery, painting, video games, or social media, it will cause lasting structural changes in the brain, especially if the activity is rewarding. This is how cultural experience changes the brain, producing a young adult who feels American instead of Japanese, or what is habitually in discover mode as opposed to defend mode. And I haven't talked a lot about that, but that's something he goes over in the book, the difference between being in defend mode versus discovery mode. While the reward-seeking parts of the brain mature earlier, the frontal cortex, essential for self-control, delay of gratification, and resistance to temptation, is not up to full capacity until the mid-20s. Maybe your lawyer has talked to you about that as you write your will. And preteens are at a particularly vulnerable point in that development. The reduction is so severe that we might refer to smartphones and tablets in the hands of children as experience blockers. Think about that. Tablets, smartphones, in many ways become experience blockers, blocking the experiences of the real world. We are physical, embodied creatures, he says, who evolved to use our hands, facial expressions, and head movements as communication channels, responding in real time to similar movements of our partners. Gen Z is learning to pick emojis instead. Again, I don't personally believe in human evolution and that I think that God created all things, but I see what he's talking about here, that we've come to accept this as natural, what years ago would not have been considered natural at all. Discover mode, people and dogs even who go through life in discover mode are happier, more sociable, and more eager for new experiences. People and dogs, he shows this with dogs, who are chronically in defend mode are more defensive and anxious. They have only rare moments of perceived safety. And humans and other highly sociable mammals, he says the default setting is a major contributor to their individual personality. And he says you really want your kids wired for discover mode, not defend mode. They tend to see new situations, people, and ideas as potential threats rather than opportunities. This is defend mode. Such chronic wariness was adaptive in some ancient environments and may still be today for children raised in unstable and violent settings, but being stuck in defend mode is an obstacle to learning and growth in the physically safe environments that surround most children in developed nations. There is a hole, an emptiness in us all, that we strive to fill. Again, Haidt says this as an unbeliever. I think ultimately God can fill that hole through his son, Jesus Christ. If it doesn't get filled with something noble and elevated, modern society will quickly pump it full of garbage. That is so true. That's been true since the beginning of the age of mass media, but the garbage pump got 100 times more powerful in the 2010s. It matters what we expose ourselves to. Some ancient wisdom from Marcus Aurelius, his advice to himself in the 2nd century: don't waste the rest of your time here worrying about other people unless it affects the common good. It will keep you from doing anything useful. You'll be too preoccupied with what so-and-so is doing and why and what they're saying and what they're thinking and what they're up to and all the other things that throw you off and keep you from focusing on your own mind. So some of the ancient philosophers would say, be about your own business, not worried about everyone else. Socially prescribed perfectionism is closely related to anxiety. People who suffer from anxiety are more prone to it. Being a perfectionist also increases your anxiety because you fear the shame of public failure for everything that you do. And as you'd expect by this point in the story, socially prescribed perfectionism began rising across the Anglosphere nations in the early 2010s. And again, if these quotes seem like he's hitting the same thing over and over, it's because he does in the book. Children aren't able to handle the virality, anonymity, instability, and potential for large-scale public shaming of the virtual world. Even adults have trouble with it. Think about that. If someone shames you on social media, how do you take that? What if you were a 7th grader? What if you were an 8th grader? And again, that fundamental contradiction: overprotection in the real world and underprotection online. And that, again, sums up so much of his book. So if you like this, give it a like. Follow on social media if you find this to be helpful. And thanks so much for your time.